She lived in a quiet town where everyone knew each other, and life moved slowly. Her days were simple, filled with the usual chores and little joys that made her feel at home. She had always imagined her life as ordinary, perhaps even a little predictable, but she liked it that way. There was comfort in knowing the rhythm of her own world, in feeling the steady pulse of life around her. Yet, as her pregnancy progressed, a sense of unease began to weave itself into her days. She would wake up early in the morning, feeling the gentle flutter of the baby inside her. Sometimes the movements were comforting, a reminder that life continued to grow within her. Other times the movements were stronger, almost alarming, as if the child were trying to communicate something she could not understand. She mentioned it to her midwife, who reassured her that every pregnancy was different, that children had their own rhythms and patterns. Still, she could not shake the feeling that this child was unlike any other. Her home, a small house with faded paint and a garden she had tended for years, became her sanctuary. She would spend hours looking at the plants, feeling the soil, and listening to the birds. On certain days, she noticed strange occurrences. Birds would gather near her window and stare at her with unusual intensity. Occasionally, the family cat would hiss at nothing, its fur bristling, and retreat into a corner, eyes wide and unblinking. She told herself it was all coincidence, a trick of the mind, but the feeling lingered that something in her life was about to change. Her friends in town often came by to visit. They would bring food, chat about daily life, and laugh together. They were kind people, simple in their ways, yet they also carried their own fears and superstitions. Some would ask about the baby. Their curiosity mingled with a faint sense of worry. They noticed the way she sometimes paused mid-sentence, her eyes distant as if she were looking beyond the room. When she tried to explain, they would nod politely, assuming it was the usual anxieties of an expectant mother. The nights were the hardest. She would lie in bed, feeling the quiet hum of the house around her, and the stillness seemed to amplify every sound and movement within her body. Occasionally, she would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her heart racing for no apparent reason. Sometimes she dreamt of strange things, figures that were neither human nor animal, shadows moving in the corners of her vision. She could never remember these dreams clearly, only the sense of dread that stayed with her long after she woke. Despite all this, she tried to remain calm. She kept up with her appointments, went for walks, and followed the advice of the doctors and midwives. But she could not ignore the whispers of the unusual, the little moments that hinted that her child was different. Once, while walking through the market, a stranger stopped and looked at her intently. The person said nothing, only smiled faintly and walked away. She remembered the face long after the stranger had disappeared, a face that seemed to carry knowledge beyond the ordinary. She began to notice other things too. Objects would move slightly when she wasn't looking. The lights in her home flickered in ways that could not be explained by faulty wiring. Sometimes she felt sudden chills as though someone had walked past her. She mentioned these incidents to no one, fearing they would think her mad. She kept a journal, writing down every oddity, every sensation, and every dream. Her handwriting became increasingly erratic as her anxiety grew, yet she found solace in recording what she saw and felt. Her family, though supportive, could not fully understand what she was experiencing. They were practical people, grounded in routine and logic, and her accounts of strange sensations were met with concern but also skepticism. They encouraged her to rest, to eat well, and to focus on the birth of the baby. They did not dismiss her feelings entirely, but there was always a gentle insistence that things would turn out normally, that children often surprised their parents, but rarely in ways that defied reason. As the days passed, she became increasingly aware of changes within herself. She felt stronger emotions, more intense than ever before. Sometimes she would feel joy so overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes. At other times, fear and anxiety would grip her, leaving her breathless. She began to speak less, as if words could not capture the depth of what she felt. She spent hours sitting quietly, listening to the wind, the birds, the distant hum of the town, and in these moments, she felt a strange connection to the world around her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep shade of orange, she felt a sudden, intense movement inside her. It was unlike anything she had experienced before. She cried out, clutching her stomach, feeling as if the child were pressing against her from the inside, demanding to be born. The sensation was both painful and exhilarating. She knew that the time had come, that her life was about to change forever. Her partner rushed to her side, helping her prepare for the journey to the hospital. The ride was tense, filled with silence broken only by her gasps of pain and the soft murmurs of reassurance from her partner. They arrived at the hospital just as the contractions became almost unbearable. The staff quickly took her to a room, setting up equipment, monitoring her vitals, and preparing for the delivery. The doctors and nurses were professional, calm, and experienced. They had seen countless births, each one different but routine. They did not yet know that this birth would challenge everything they understood about life and nature. They began their work efficiently, guiding her through each contraction, helping her breathe, and offering support. Yet even in their seasoned eyes there was a glimmer of curiosity, a subtle recognition that this birth might not be ordinary. She gripped the edges of the hospital bed, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. The room was filled with the sounds of monitors beeping, the soft rustle of medical supplies, and her own strained breaths. Each moment stretched endlessly, a combination of pain, expectation, and something indefinable that hovered in the air. She could not explain it, but she sensed that the arrival of her child would mark a turning point, not just in her life, but in the lives of everyone who would witness it. As the labor progressed, the movements inside her became more pronounced, almost urgent. She felt a connection to the child unlike any she had known. It was as if the child were aware of the room, the people, the world outside, and was responding with a force she could barely contain. The medical team noticed the intensity as well, their calm professionalism meeting a situation that was increasingly difficult to predict. Hours passed in a blur of contractions, guidance, and effort. She focused on her breathing, on the sensation of life within her, and on the hope that she could bring this child into the world safely. And then, in a moment that seemed both eternal and instantaneous, the baby emerged. But it was not the baby they expected. The room fell silent, the usual cries of a newborn replaced by a sound that none of them could immediately identify. She looked down, and what she saw made her heart race, filled with a mixture of fear, awe, and protective instinct. The doctors were shocked, the nurses frozen for a brief moment, and yet she instinctively reached out to her child. There was a connection there, a bond that transcended explanation. Despite the fear and confusion, she felt an overwhelming desire to protect, to nurture, to understand. The child, this mysterious creature, was hers, and she would not let anyone take that away. In that hospital room, the ordinary world she had known seemed to shift. The quiet town, her simple routines, her safe little home, all of it felt distant and fragile. She was now on the edge of something unknown, something that would challenge every belief, every expectation she had ever held. And in that moment she understood that her life, and the life of the child she had brought into the world, would never be ordinary again. The room was tense, filled with the quiet hum of machines and the low voices of doctors and nurses. She lay on the hospital bed, exhausted but alert, feeling the last waves of labor coursing through her body. Each contraction brought her closer to meeting her child, but also to an experience she could not have imagined. The child's movements inside her were urgent, almost intelligent, as if it was guiding her through the process. The doctor, a middle-aged man with years of experience, monitored her carefully. He had seen hundreds of births, yet something about this one felt different. There was an energy in the room that he could not explain, a tension that made him pause more than usual before giving instructions. The monitors showed unusual readings. Her vital signs were steady, but the baby's heartbeat fluctuated in a way that was not typical. He frowned and called for an extra nurse to assist. She gripped the sides of the bed, breathing in the patterns the doctor instructed, focusing on the sensations within her body. The pain was intense, but it was not unbearable. It was accompanied by a strange sense of connection, as if the child inside her were aware of every thought, every fear, and every hope she held. The room felt alive in a way she could not describe. Shadows seemed to move slightly, and she thought she saw a flicker of light where none should have been. The doctor guided her through the pushing phase. He remained calm, though his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. He had never seen such precise, forceful movements from a fetus. The nurses whispered quietly among themselves, unsure whether to intervene or wait. She could feel the child moving in patterns that did not follow the usual rhythm, almost as if it were trying to communicate through its actions. Finally, after what felt like hours, the child emerged. The doctor leaned closer, expecting to see a normal newborn, but the moment he saw the creature, his face went pale. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The skin had a subtle shimmer, not quite human, not quite animal. Its eyes were large, dark, and filled with an intelligence that was impossible to ignore. The creature made a sound, a soft, melodic cooing, that was neither a cry nor a typical newborn sound, but something entirely new. She gasped, looking at the child with wide eyes. Fear and awe mixed in her chest. Yet instinctively she reached out, holding the creature close. Despite its unusual appearance, she felt a warmth, a life force that demanded her protection. She whispered soft words, stroking the creature gently. It responded, turning its tiny head toward her voice, pressing against her chest as if seeking comfort and reassurance. The doctor stepped back, carefully examining the child. He called for additional equipment and conducted a series of tests. The readings were baffling. The creature's vital signs were within normal ranges for a newborn, yet certain measurements were far beyond what human infants could achieve. He exchanged glances with his nurses, who were equally perplexed. None of them had ever encountered anything like this. The room seemed to hold its breath as they worked quietly, careful not to alarm the mother. She watched them, feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. She wanted answers, but feared what the answers might reveal. The nurses tried to keep the atmosphere calm, but the tension was undeniable. Whispers of speculation filled the room, questions about where the child had come from, whether it was healthy, and what the future might hold. She ignored them, focusing entirely on the child in her arms, feeling the gentle heartbeat, the tiny movements, the warmth that reassured her. Hours passed as they conducted various assessments. The child responded to touch and sound in ways that were extraordinary. When she hummed softly, it would move its small limbs in rhythm with her voice. It seemed to recognize the people around it, though cautiously, and its eyes followed the doctor and nurses as if it were studying them. The medical team was amazed but cautious. They had to balance their professional duties with the profound strangeness of what they were witnessing. The doctor decided to call a pediatric specialist to examine the child. When the specialist arrived, they too were shocked, though they tried to maintain professionalism. The creature's anatomy was different yet functional. The specialist could not explain the unusual features, and every test only deepened the mystery. Despite this, the creature's presence was calm, almost serene, as if it understood that it was being studied but did not feel threatened. She stayed by the bedside, holding the child close, speaking softly, and observing every movement. She noticed subtle behaviors, an awareness of her emotions, a reaction to the room's energy, a seeming comprehension of simple gestures. It was not just a baby. It was a being capable of perceiving and responding in ways that went beyond ordinary human understanding. As the night progressed, the hospital room remained quiet but tense. The staff rotated in and out, all of them fascinated yet careful not to overstep. They recorded observations, consulted texts, and debated quietly. Some suggested transferring the child to a specialized facility, but the mother refused. She would not let anyone separate her from the creature. Feeling a deep bond that could not be explained, she whispered assurances and promises, vowing to protect it no matter what. At one point, the creature made a small, almost deliberate movement, reaching out with tiny hands as if to touch the doctor. The doctor froze, startled. It was a gesture of recognition, a connection that transcended fear and strangeness. He realized that this child, or creature, was not just unusual in appearance, but in its presence and perception. Every instinct he had about life and birth was being challenged. Hours turned into early morning. The quiet of the hospital was broken only by the soft hum of machines and the creature's gentle coos. The mother stayed vigilant, sensing a need to protect and nurture that went beyond ordinary maternal instinct. She felt the depth of the child's awareness, the strength of its life force, and a strange comfort that despite the unknown, they were together and safe in that room. The staff continued their observations, noting every anomaly, but also the child's calm and responsive nature. It seemed to understand instructions, gestures, and tone of voice in ways that defied explanation. The mother marveled at this intelligence, feeling a mixture of wonder and worry. She wondered what the future held, whether the world would accept this child, and what she would need to do to keep it safe. As dawn broke, sunlight streamed into the room, casting a golden hue over the scene. The mother looked at her child, now resting peacefully in her arms, and felt a profound shift in her life. She knew that the ordinary world she had once known was gone. In its place was something extraordinary, something that would require courage, love, and patience. She vowed silently that no matter what others said, no matter the challenges that lay ahead, she would remain steadfast in her devotion and protection. The doctor, observing quietly from a distance, finally allowed himself a moment to reflect. He had been trained to understand biology, anatomy, and human development, but nothing in his career had prepared him for this. The shock and awe he felt were tempered by a growing sense of responsibility. He realized that the child's existence demanded respect and careful attention. Science could not yet explain it, but human compassion and care could. The mother held the creature close, whispering promises and sharing her heartbeat, offering the only world she could guarantee, one of love, protection, and understanding. In that small hospital room, the ordinary rules of life and expectation seemed suspended. A new chapter had begun, filled with questions, mysteries, and the undeniable bond between a mother and her extraordinary child. The next morning, news of the unusual birth had begun to ripple through the hospital quietly. Staff members spoke in hushed tones in corridors, careful not to alarm patients but unable to contain their curiosity. Everyone who entered the room seemed to notice something different, a tension that went beyond the ordinary. The mother remained calm, holding the creature gently in her arms, her eyes soft with care and protection. She could sense the apprehension in those around her. But she also knew that this child, her child, was hers alone to guide and nurture. The nurses rotated carefully, some trying to offer assistance, others standing back, unsure how to interact with something so extraordinary. They noticed small details, the creature's eyes following movements with perfect attention, tiny hands reacting to sound and touch, and a calmness in its presence that seemed to affect everyone nearby. Even the doctor, who had been deeply shocked the previous night, remained vigilant, taking meticulous notes and running repeated tests. Every result puzzled him further. Everything about the child defied his understanding of biology and newborn development. The mother was questioned repeatedly, asked to describe her pregnancy, her experiences, and anything unusual she might have noticed. She recounted strange dreams, feelings of connection, and moments where she sensed the child's presence long before birth. She told them about the flickering lights, the animal's odd behavior around her home, and the strange occurrences in her daily life. The staff listened with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Some nodded politely, attributing it to stress or heightened perception during pregnancy. But the mother could see the uncertainty in their eyes. They could feel it too, though none of them could put it into words. Word of the birth began to spread beyond the hospital walls. In the small town, whispers turned into conversations, and conversations turned into rumors. People speculated about what had been born, what it looked like, and what it meant. Some feared the unknown, imagining dark possibilities. Others were intrigued, hoping to catch a glimpse of the extraordinary child. The mother tried to ignore the growing attention, focusing instead on the creature, sensing that outside eyes could bring danger or misunderstanding. The first visitors were relatives and close friends, people who had known her for years and had come to support her. They were shocked, of course, but their reactions were tempered by love and concern. They asked questions, held the child briefly, and marveled at its intelligence and responsiveness. The creature seemed to recognize familiar faces, responding differently to those it trusted. With strangers, it remained cautious yet never displayed aggression, only curiosity. Its behavior was almost human in some ways, yet distinctly unique, creating an aura of wonder and uncertainty. The hospital administration grew concerned. They had never faced a situation like this before and debated how to proceed. Some suggested transferring the child to a research facility or contacting specialists from larger cities. Others argued that removing it from its mother could cause trauma and that careful observation within the hospital was best. The mother stood firm, refusing to let anyone take the child from her. She understood the risks, but also knew that separation could be devastating. She was prepared to fight for her child's safety, even against authority. As days passed, the mother and child settled into a rhythm. The creature thrived under her care, responding to touch, voice, and even subtle emotions. It seemed to communicate without words through gestures, expressions, and movements that were surprisingly deliberate. The mother learned to interpret these signals, understanding the creature's needs and desires. This connection deepened their bond, making her fiercely protective, not just of its physical safety but of its place in the world. Outside the hospital, curiosity and fear continued to grow. Some townspeople tried to catch glimpses through windows or asking questions under the pretense of concern. The mother remained vigilant, aware of every glance, every whisper. She felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just for her child but for how the world would perceive it. She could sense the potential for misunderstanding, judgment, or even harm, and it filled her with quiet determination. She would shield the child as best she could while preparing for the challenges ahead. The doctor continued his studies, often staying late into the night. He observed the child's behavior, documenting everything from physical abilities to emotional responses. He began to notice patterns. The creature learned quickly, mimicked certain behaviors, and reacted to stimuli in ways that suggested higher intelligence than a normal newborn. He was both fascinated and unsettled. He questioned himself constantly, wondering how much of this could be explained by science and how much required something beyond his understanding. One afternoon, the creature reacted to a visitor in a way that startled everyone. The visitor, a nurse unfamiliar with the child, reached out tentatively, and the creature mirrored her hand movements perfectly. It seemed to understand what she was doing and responded almost playfully, as if joining in a silent game. Everyone in the room froze for a moment, realizing that this child or creature possessed a consciousness and awareness far beyond what they expected. The mother smiled gently, reassuring the visitor and holding the creature close, proud and protective at the same time. Even during simple routines, the child showed signs of extraordinary perception. It would turn toward subtle sounds, follow movements with precise attention, and respond to emotions around it. The mother noticed that it seemed to prefer her voice and touch, yet it was not fearful of others. There was a calm intelligence that guided its interactions, making each moment unpredictable yet fascinating. She marveled at these behaviors, sometimes afraid that the outside world would misinterpret them as something dangerous or unnatural. As the days passed, the mother began to think about life beyond the hospital. She understood that keeping the child hidden forever was impossible, yet she also feared exposure. People could be cruel, fearful, or misinformed. She knew she would need to find a way to protect the child while preparing for eventual interactions with the outside world. The thought filled her with both anxiety and resolve. She spent long hours holding the creature, feeling the connection strengthen and planning silently for the challenges that lay ahead. The hospital staff began to adapt to the child's presence. Some became allies, assisting with care, observing behaviors, and helping to document its extraordinary abilities. Others remained skeptical, unsure how to respond or what actions were appropriate. The tension between fascination and fear created an unusual atmosphere, one in which every movement and sound from the creature was noted and analyzed. The mother remained the constant anchor, guiding interactions and protecting her child from unnecessary stress or exposure. The first week passed in a blur of observation, care, and quiet wonder. The mother began to feel a sense of normalcy in her daily interactions, even in the midst of extraordinary circumstances. She learned to read the creature's signals, anticipate its needs, and provide comfort and security. In return, the creature responded with signs of trust, affection, and recognition. The bond between them grew stronger each day, creating a sense of unity that was almost tangible. Yet outside the hospital, whispers continued. Rumors of an unusual birth spread through the town, mixing fact with imagination. Some believed it was a miracle, others suspected something unnatural. The mother knew that eventually, the world would demand explanations. She also knew that the creature's life might be shaped by the perceptions and fears of others. The thought weighed heavily on her, but it did not diminish her determination. She would face whatever challenges came, guided by love, intuition, and the bond she shared with her child. In the quiet of the hospital room, as night fell again, the mother held the creature close. The soft hum of machines, the gentle coos of the child, and the faint sounds of the town outside created a cocoon of stillness. She felt the depth of their connection, the extraordinary nature of the being in her arms, and the enormity of the world waiting beyond the hospital walls. She whispered promises of protection, guidance, and love, knowing that these words were the foundation of the life she would help shape. As she rested, she realized that this was only the beginning. The world outside was full of uncertainty, curiosity, and potential danger. But inside the hospital, in her arms, there was safety, understanding, and a bond that could not be broken. The creature's eyes met hers, calm and knowing, as if acknowledging the promise she had made. In that quiet moment, she understood that no matter what the world demanded, they would face it together with courage, love, and unshakable resolve. As the days passed, the creature continued to astonish everyone in the hospital. Its abilities became more pronounced, leaving the medical team both fascinated and uneasy. While physically it seemed delicate, its movements were precise and coordinated beyond what one would expect from a newborn. The creature learned quickly, responding to new sounds, lights, and gestures with an understanding that made the staff question what they thought they knew about life and intelligence. The mother watched with amazement as her child explored the small world of the hospital room. With tiny hands, it reached out to touch objects, reacting with curiosity to the textures and colors. When she hummed a soft tune, the creature would move its tiny body in rhythm, almost as if it were dancing along to the sound. Its eyes were constantly observing, analyzing, and reacting to subtle changes in the room. Every movement seemed purposeful, as though it were learning and understanding more than the people around it could comprehend. The doctor continued to monitor the creature closely, running tests and recording every anomaly. Its physical development was normal in some aspects, but there were extraordinary traits he could not explain. It appeared to recognize faces almost immediately, remembered patterns of interaction, and even seemed to anticipate movements before they happened. The realization that the child possessed intelligence and awareness far beyond typical newborns weighed heavily on him. He began questioning not just medical knowledge, but the nature of life itself. One afternoon, a power outage caused the lights to flicker and go out for a brief moment. In that darkness, the creature remained calm, its eyes adjusting as if it could see more clearly than anyone expected. It reached out and touched the mother's face, guiding her hand gently, almost as if comforting her. The doctor and nurses observed in silence, astonished by the child's calm and adaptive behavior. It was as though the creature had a perception that went beyond human senses. The mother noticed small but significant behaviors that hinted at a deeper awareness. The creature seemed to sense her emotions, responding differently when she was anxious, happy, or fearful. When she spoke softly, it would turn its head toward her voice, following the tone and cadence with attention that was unusual for a newborn. When she touched it gently, it would press closer, seeking reassurance and offering a sense of trust that was profound and unique. Outside the hospital, curiosity about the child continued to grow. Word spread slowly, as if the town itself were holding its breath, careful and curious. People speculated, some with excitement and wonder, others with fear and apprehension. The mother was aware of the whispers and the looks of intrigue. She knew that eventually people would want to see, to understand, or even exploit the extraordinary child. Her protective instincts grew stronger with each passing day. She could not allow anyone to take the creature from her care. The creature's abilities continued to reveal themselves in unexpected ways. It learned quickly to interact with objects, manipulating them with skill that belied its size and age. It seemed to understand cause and effect, mimicking actions it observed and sometimes anticipating outcomes. The mother noticed subtle intelligence in its eyes, a curiosity about the world that seemed unbounded. It would watch the doctor with concentration, almost studying him, and then respond to his gestures in ways that were both surprising and unsettling. The doctor confided in a trusted nurse, expressing his mixture of awe and concern. He spoke of the ethical dilemmas, the need for understanding, and the possibility that this child could change perceptions of life and development. The nurse listened carefully, aware of the potential consequences of sharing their observations too widely. Together, they maintained meticulous records, documenting behaviors, responses, and interactions, while respecting the mother's protective wishes. One evening, the creature demonstrated an unexpected level of communication. It reached out with small, precise gestures, pointing toward objects or moving its tiny hands in patterns that seemed deliberate. The mother interpreted these actions as requests or responses, realizing that her child was capable of conveying meaning without words. The realization filled her with both wonder and responsibility. She understood that guiding this child would require patience, intuition, and love beyond anything she had experienced. During quiet moments, the mother observed subtle connections between the creature and its environment, It seemed sensitive to sounds and changes in light, reacting to them with calmness or alertness depending on the situation. When she moved about the room, it would track her, sometimes anticipating her actions and reacting before she touched it. The doctor and nurses noted these behaviors with a mix of fascination and caution. They understood that while the child was not threatening, its extraordinary awareness posed questions they could not answer. The mother began to experiment with gentle teaching, showing the creature objects, sounds, and simple interactions. It responded quickly, demonstrating learning and memory that far exceeded typical expectations. The mother marveled at the rapid development and the clarity of comprehension in her child. Each interaction deepened their bond, creating a sense of partnership and understanding that was profound and unique. The hospital staff began to adapt to the creature's extraordinary presence. Some became allies, helping to observe and support the child while respecting the mother's authority. Others remained distant, unsure how to respond to something so unusual. The atmosphere was a careful balance of curiosity, caution, and wonder. Every gesture, sound, and reaction from the child was noted and analyzed, each observation adding to the growing realization that this birth was unlike any other. The mother sensed that the creature was aware of the broader world beyond the hospital. It seemed to respond to distant sounds, shadows, and subtle movements with a level of understanding that suggested perception beyond ordinary senses. She marveled at the intelligence and sensitivity of her child, yet she also felt a weight of responsibility. The outside world could be unforgiving, filled with fear, misunderstanding, or exploitation.
She knew that protecting this child meant preparing for challenges that were not yet visible. As days turned into weeks,
the child's abilities continued to emerge in ways that amazed and concerned the adults around it. It displayed rapid learning, remarkable perception, and an emotional sensitivity that created a sense of connection and empathy beyond its age. The mother's protective instincts remained strong, guiding interactions, ensuring safety, and nurturing the extraordinary intelligence and awareness that defined her child. One night, as the hospital settled into quiet, the mother held the creature close. The room was dim, the soft hum of machines providing a steady backdrop. The creature reached out, touching her face and hands with deliberate care. It responded to her whispers, its small body moving in rhythm with her voice. She felt the depth of the connection, a bond that went beyond words or explanation. In that moment, she realized that this child, this extraordinary being, was not just her responsibility but also a part of her very life, shaping her world and altering everything she had known. The doctor observed quietly from a distance, taking notes while giving the mother space. He felt a mixture of professional curiosity and deep respect. He recognized that this child was a phenomenon, a being that could challenge understanding and inspire wonder. He understood the delicate balance between observation and interference, and resolved to honor the mother's authority while documenting the extraordinary development before him. As dawn approached, the mother and child remained together, connected by trust, care, and a shared sense of understanding. The hospital room, once a place of routine and procedure, had become a sanctuary for discovery, love, and protection. The mother knew that the outside world awaited with curiosity, fear, and questions. Yet in the quiet of this room, she felt prepared to face the unknown, guided by intuition, love, and the remarkable awareness of her extraordinary child. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between the mother and the creature deepened in ways that surprised everyone around them. The child's intelligence, awareness, and emotional sensitivity continued to grow, leaving the hospital staff in awe. Every new day brought behaviors that were unusual yet remarkable, demonstrating a level of understanding that no one had expected from a newborn. It learned quickly, communicated in subtle ways, and responded to the world around it with remarkable insight. The mother remained vigilant, balancing the joy of witnessing her child's development with the constant awareness of potential danger from the outside world. She understood that the extraordinary abilities of her child could attract attention, and not all of it would be kind. She carefully monitored visitors, controlled interactions, and ensured that the child remained safe and comfortable. Her instincts were sharp, guiding her decisions with a mix of maternal intuition and protective resolve. As the creature grew, it displayed remarkable traits that continued to challenge the medical staff. It seemed to have heightened senses, detecting changes in light, sound, and movement that others could not perceive. Its ability to anticipate actions, respond to emotions, and learn quickly amazed the doctors and nurses. They documented everything, fascinated and cautious at the same time. The mother, however, remained the constant presence, providing reassurance, love, and guidance in a world that was slowly revealing itself as unpredictable and potentially threatening. The doctor spent long hours observing the child, careful not to interfere but eager to understand. He noticed patterns of learning, memory, and interaction that suggested intelligence far beyond normal human development. Yet he also noticed a calmness, a gentleness, and a sense of awareness that reassured him that the creature was not dangerous. Despite his professional training, he could not explain what he saw, and he felt the limits of his understanding being tested. He respected the mother's role and saw the deep bond between her and the child as essential to its growth. Rumors about the child continued to spread outside the hospital. People in the town whispered about what had been born, some fearful, others curious, and a few awestruck. The mother knew that one day she would have to confront the outside world, but she prepared herself carefully. She planned for patience, vigilance, and careful communication, knowing that the child's well-being depended on her guidance. She was determined to shield it from fear and prejudice, while allowing it to explore its extraordinary potential. The child's abilities became increasingly evident. It responded to complex gestures, learned from observation, and even seemed to display an understanding of intentions and emotions. The mother was amazed by the creature's perceptiveness and capacity for connection. She noticed that it could sense subtle shifts in tone, mood, and atmosphere, responding with empathy and awareness that seemed almost human. It was as if the child could understand not just the present moment, but the emotional state of those around it. One evening, the mother reflected on the journey they had shared. From the first moments of birth, through the initial shock of the doctors and nurses to the growing awareness and intelligence of the child, she had witnessed a transformation. She understood that their lives were forever changed. The ordinary world she had known had been replaced by a reality filled with wonder, responsibility, and the need for courage. She felt a mixture of awe, love, and determination that strengthened her resolve to protect and guide her child. As the creature grew more aware, it also displayed creativity in its interactions. It began experimenting with sounds, movements, and gestures, seemingly exploring its own abilities and learning from the environment. The mother encouraged this exploration, providing safe opportunities for the child to develop and express itself. The bond between them was strengthened by these shared experiences, creating a foundation of trust and understanding that was unbreakable. The doctor continued to observe cautiously, recognizing the importance of the mother's guidance. He documented every behavior, interaction, and response, noting the extraordinary development and awareness. He also understood that the child's uniqueness could not be fully captured by scientific measures alone. It required empathy, patience, and respect, qualities that the mother demonstrated every day. Her care and dedication provided a safe and nurturing environment where the child could thrive. As word of the child's abilities and intelligence spread, the mother knew she would eventually have to face challenges from the outside world. People might try to intervene, to question, or even to take the child away.